So we're going to continue talking about this concept of limits. But before we do that, we're going to examine, certain tolerances, if you will, because what we want to know later on, suppose that I have some graph, and say that I want the limit at some number, and let's call it C. Okay, I want the limit at some number C. And let's suppose, and let me zoom in here so that you can see it. Let's suppose that the limit of C is some number L, okay? Well, what I want to know is how far away from C on X, okay? Suppose A, and suppose this is B. Suppose that I want to know how far away from X, or from C, an X value can be to have the same limit. Okay, so suppose that as we approach A, the limit is relatively close to L, and as we approach B, the limit could be also relatively close to L. So let's say that we want to know, well, how big of a spread can I have? So let's say this is the spread that I'm talking about. And then the other spread that I'm talking about is this one right here. So how big of a spread can I have from X, in this case the letter C, a number C, how big of a spread can I have so that the limit is still the limit, L? Okay, and what we do is we call that this value delta. We call that this value delta. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is that, in order to figure that out, you've got to, there's different things to do to examine this, of course, but the delta, the largest delta that we can have is the one with the least amount of spread. So in this case, if we're looking at this picture, we have two different delta values. I'm going to say the yellow delta and the blue delta. All right. So the largest delta that we can have is represented by the yellow spread. So what is the delta? It's the distance away from the number that we're investigating. It's the amount of spread, delta D for distance. Okay, so it's the largest amount of spread that we can have for a limit for another X value to approach the same limit, in other words. So maybe a little bit confusing to understand, but it's okay. It's not necessary really in this precise definition for you to really understand. So we're going to take a look at this a little bit further, but let's go ahead and examine a couple of examples. And we're going to determine that spread that's necessary. Okay, so let's take a look here. We're given 3 problems, and we're looking at the first one, number 1. We're investigating around the number -8. And we are on an interval from -10 to 0. And so the spread that we see here, and let me go ahead and pull out a different color. The spread here is, and this actually should be -10 now that I think about it. The spread here is 2 units. How far away is A from C? 2 units. Now let's find out how far away is -8 from 0. That's 8 units. So in this case, the largest spread, the largest tolerance that I can accept is 2 units. Okay, so in this case, my delta is 2 units. Okay, because I can't go beyond 8 units here. I can't pick something 8 units away from -8, suppose -16, all right, and still have the same limit. Okay, so that's what we're examining here. That threshold, delta, is the distance away from the number we're investigating, and it's a threshold on X. If you're talking about a Y value, that threshold is expressed in terms of a letter, a Greek letter, epsilon, and we'll get into that a little bit later in another video. So let's examine this spread now and this spread now. All right, so between A and C, the spread is 2/9, and between B and C, the spread, it looks like it's, what is that? 5/9. I'm sorry, 5/9. Let me erase that. 5/9. Okay, so the delta the largest delta that we can accept is the one with the narrowest spread. So in this case, the delta will be 2/9. All right. So hopefully, you're understanding. All right. But like I said, for this precise definition, I think the conceptual definition of limit is is a lot better to interpret, or a lot better to have an understanding of. All right. But we do this because it's just, the technical knowledge that's needed. But don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. You'll be okay. All right. Now, with a calculator, you could easily verify, or if you do some really quick mental math, the spread here is 0.486 and the spread here is 0.892. So the largest spread that we can have is this 0.486. So that's going to be our delta value there. All right. So if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. But otherwise, it's pretty easy to figure out here. So as always, if this video was helpful, be sure to like and subscribe.